Most bankers aren't ready to help you until after their third cup of coffee. But with Central National Bank's after-hours service, you don't have to wait for the bank lobby to open to get help. You can contact us from 6 to 8:30 in the morning or from 5 to 10 in the evening, and we'll connect you to a real, live, local person who can answer questions and fix problems 7 days a week. Bank different. Bank Central. Central National Bank. Member FDIC.
It's done.
Connor McDavid! It's not real!
The goal of the year,
Panarin!
part of the past. The celebrations, forgotten. The history,
Vegas Golden Knights!
history. We're back to a blank slate. Clean ice. All that matters now is what happens next. The Stanley Cup playoffs.
Eastern Conference Final begins Wednesday.
Okay, you ready to
go? Sure, why not? That's the kind of inspiring answer that you want, right? Oh, hey, look, the Titanic's on.
Hey, what's up, Blazer fans? Welcome to the Blazers Edge podcast. I am Tara Bowen-Biggs, joined as always by Blazers outsider Danny Marang.
An avid watcher of Titanic.
Is that what you're watching right now?
I always have to put something
How many
on in the
things are you
background.
doing while you're supposed to be podcasting with me?
I always have to have something on in the background. Otherwise, I just I can't blankly stare at my laptop or at the mic. There always has to be something else going on. I don't know. I can't.
I've never seen Titanic.
Wait, okay, so welcome.
Are you surprised?
Welcome to the podcast where for the rest of the time we're going to talk about how Tara has possibly avoided watching Titanic over the last 30 years.
But we're not, though, actually, because the Blazers have made a trade, and I am so excited about this. I know it's not like an earth-shaking or shattering trade, but it's a trade, and it's for more than someone's contract that we're going to stretch for the next 7 years.
Or a highly protected second-round pick.
Right. So why don't you summarize the trade?
Okay, so they package up the minimum salary of Nick Stauskas and the minimum salary of Wade Baldwin, and which is I believe is like 3.2 off the top of my head. I think it's 3. Anyways, they bring back Rodney Hood and his $3.4 million contract, who had to waive his no trade clause because of his bird rights. To land in Portland, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, why that maybe means something or maybe it doesn't. Portland also included 2, I believe, unprotected second-round picks in 2021 and 2023. So maybe a bit of an overpay, but Portland gets away from not paying a first-round pick for a wing who may or may not be an improvement over what Portland currently has.
So we've been talking about how Portland needs wings.
Mm-hmm.
They brought in 6'8" or 9" Rodney Hood, who is listed to me when he was playing with the Jazz was actually a shooting guard. So that's something I want to talk about in a little while.
He's a big shooting guard.
Right. So they brought him in, and Nick Stauskas, I believe when we were talking to Casey Holdall the other night, I asked him what the deal was with the Nick Stauskas tribute video that they played in the Jazz game. And he said it was just it happened to be a timing thing. It was just a coincidence.
Yeah.
But my conspiracy brain was very not surprised to hear that it was Nick Stauskas.
Yeah, the only thing they were missing was Sarah McLachlan playing "I Will Remember You" over the top of it. I mean, that's about how on brand that was.
But you know what? That video of Nick Stauskas saying goodbye to everybody in the practice facility, you could put that to Sarah McLachlan, and that would be just like I got a little choked up.
No, I was welcome to the personal side of this stuff. I mean, think about the piece that was written about Nick when he got here, right? About how he finally found a home, how he feels welcome and loved and with a franchise, and all of a sudden now he's being cast back out to, basketball purgatory. And also, I mean, let's be honest here, U.S. purgatory, it's Cleveland.
Well, come on now.
It's Cleveland.
Be nice to the people of Cleveland.
No, I'm not going to be nice to them. It's just a tremendously horrid city.
That is I really want to dwell on that, but I'm not going to dwell on it because we have stuff to talk about. And I'm just going to say I'm not going to allow you to just like say something mean about the entire city of Cleveland. I'm sure there are lovely people in the city of Cleveland.
It's not the people; it's the city itself. It's not an attractive.
Well, the city is made of people, Dan.
No, it's the buildings and the layout, and it's just like the actual city. It's an ugly city.
So you know who doesn't live in Cleveland anymore?
Rodney Hood.
Rodney Hood.
I bet you he lives in the suburbs because like who lives in Cleveland?
So let's talk about Rodney Hood. I just wrote a piece for Blazers Edge that I think is going to come out tomorrow. This is just like get to know Rodney Hood. Just wanted to put it all in one place. So for people who aren't very familiar with him, he is from Mississippi. He is about 100 miles east of Jackson. And his dad ran the Boys and Girls Club, and his mom was a principal of the high school. He led his team to the 6A state championships. He was Mr. Gatorade, or Mississippi's, Mr. Gatorade basketball or whatever it is.
I believe Outlaw was the same thing, too. I think Travis was the Mississippi Gatorade Player of the Year.
Yeah, could have been. I don't know. But for whatever year, I looked it up. I verified it on their website to see which year it was. So then he went to Mississippi State, where both of his parents actually played basketball. And he was there for a year. And then the coach who recruited him left. So he chose to leave and go to Duke. And he had to sit out a year. And he sat out a year. And then his second year at Duke, he was able to play. He played. It wasn't a banner year for Duke. They, I think, lost in the first or second round of the NCAA tournament. But after that 1 year playing for Duke, he was taken in the draft by the Utah Jazz, where he played 3.5 seasons. He had pretty good start. I mean, he had a kind of a slow start because he had an injury kind of that slowed down his rookie season. But then after that, he kind of came in and was a good fit over there. But then about halfway through his, would have been 4th year there, is when they started sorting out all the pieces that they had in Utah. And it kind of started to look like maybe he was going to be on his way out. And in fact, he was part of that massive roster rebuild that Cleveland did halfway through the year last year.
Yeah, trying to make the Ron happy.
Right. That there were like 900 players all moved in a day with Isaiah Thomas and George Hill and Shumpert and the big switcheroo. Anyway,
roster apocalypse.
Rodney Hood ended up in Cleveland, where the fit has not been as good as it was when he was really excelling in Utah. And now he's a Portland Trailblazer.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit about him.
Yep.
I don't know. When I was reading about him, I was looking at the kind of basketball that he was playing in Utah versus the way he was playing in Cleveland, trying to figure out the fit there. And one thing that I did notice was that when he was playing in Utah, when he was he had slightly better numbers, is he took more threes when he was in Utah. When he moved to Cleveland, he was kind of like taking a whole bunch more 2-pointers. And also when he was in Utah, he played a lot of shooting guard, and then he had to play small forward when he was over there in Cleveland. So what do you think his role is going to be? Having done two very different things, what do you think his role and fit is going to be in Portland? Do
everything Mo Harkless is supposed to do.
So a 3?
Yeah, he'll play as a 3 in my opinion, because he's not going to take CJ's spot. I don't think anybody's looking at that right now. And if you look at where Hood ranks this year and really what he's done throughout his career, very good in the pick and roll as a scorer. Just looking at the synergy numbers for him earlier tonight, he ranks in the top quarter in pick and roll ball handler, top quarter in spot up, top 20% in isolation, and top quarter in handoff. Remind me again, what the Blazers run a lot of.
Yeah, I did read an article about him and Rudy Gobert being a really effective combination, and it was the year that Rudy Gobert then went and got injured, and so they never really got to see as much of it.
Yeah.
What makes him good at it? Like, have you watched enough of him to be able to
plenty of Hood. He's actually a guy leading up into the deadline I had been talking to a few people in Cleveland about, and my thought was that he could be had by Portland, but it was probably going to cost the first. And I think the the line that Cleveland wanted here was that they wanted a first, but they probably thought at the end of the day, it's probably not going to happen. And they ended up going with the 2 seconds plus some expiring contracts. You get a flyer on some guys that maybe help drive your lottery odds up as much as you can with the new lottery odds. But Hood's a guy I kind of had on the radar for a while because he fits the profile of what Neil Olshey's done in the past, right? Low risk, not a lot of commitment, salary's low. You have the option to get out of the deal soon.
A guy coming from somewhere where he's not really maybe a very good fit, so he could blossom in a different situation.
Exactly. So he fits all those profiles. But here's where I think Olshey did well. And listen, I've been plenty critical of a lot of his moves in the past. But in this one, he addresses some of Portland's needs. Longer, more athletic, capable player both off the bounce and as a shooter. And you get longer.
Right. So, but is he longer than Jake and Mo? I mean, you think that he's going to be playing the three. He's not any longer than those guys, is he?
No, but we're talking about, we gave up Stauskas and Wade Baldwin.
Right. But those guys were at the end of the bench. They weren't actually really playing.
No. I'm just talking about, but as a roster is constructed, did the Blazers get more athletic and longer? Yes, They did. And they also got more functional shooting out of it. You've got a guy in Rodney Hood who can create off the bounce, who is a willing cutter and can knock down a perimeter shot. Like, he's a career 37% 3-point shooter. Sign me up for that. Like, I'm totally cool with that. What he has the potential to do, or what he realistically, what he's done throughout his career is what I think, at least in my case, offensively, is what I've wanted from Harkless since he's been here. Hood does that. And so that's where I think we start leaning towards the speculation of what does this move mean going forward. Because as you said,
so is this the only move, or
exactly? Now the question, like you said, is this the only move? I'll ask you first, Arrow. Like, do you think this is the only move?
Well, they're short a roster spot, but they don't technically need to fill that, do they?
Nope. You can carry 13 and be good.
So they could be done. They don't have any backup guys, so if anybody gets injured out of the major rotation players, it would be Swanigan or Seth. I mean, that's really thin if they don't add anybody. So, but if they add somebody, they're not going to be under the tax, which is one thing that you thought was their goal. But if they gambled on Rodney Hood as the addition that they needed, yeah, I don't think that just seems too thin for them not to be done to me. Just too thin, like really biggie. Well, I guess Trent and Simons are there and they've been recalled.
Yes. So you've got a little bit of leeway there. Not
but
much,
that would,
but we're talking
that
again,
could
very
potentially, if they were inserted and if one of the rookies were inserted into the lineup for, a good 10-game stretch or something,
emergency services
may cost them some wins.
Yeah. So here's my whole conspiracy theory. And so Hood was one of the guys that I had tagged of about 4 or 5 guys that Portland could realistically land. I figured it would cost them the first, but it would be as a part of a series of moves. And what that basically was is it was a trigger because Rodney Hood, as you talked about, fits kind of the same profile as Jake Layman and Mo Harkless. Well, Jake Layman's probably going to be cheaper in the long run than Mo Harkless if you're opting to keep him when his contract expires. His cap hit's going to be smaller. Harkless still has the extra year on his deal. So if by adding Hood, you're looking at possibly moving on from Harkless, and you still have that first round pick in your pocket. Looking around the league, how many teams have salary cap space?
Sacramento, aren't they the only
ding,
ones?
Ding, 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 ding. Remind me, what is the one position that Sacramento is bereft of players at right now?
I'm going to guess wings.
Small forwards. They do not have them. What they do have is a stinking, heaping pile of bigs. And what do the Blazers need a little bit of help at? Hey, a little bit of big action. So my theory is Portland's probably on the phone with Sacramento if they are indeed looking to move on from Harkless. Otherwise, they're looking at other places. The one that I suggested was Harkless in a first, and you bring back Skal Labissiere. And with that, you get the big body. And again, you're fitting a profile of Neil Olshey, guys he's brought in. Younger, has talent, maybe a little disgruntled, not happy about his role, with an opportunity to grow. He's got this year and next on his deal. So you're giving, again, that flyer of opportunity, right? We're kind of propagating that cycle. Mm-hmm. So you're balancing the roster. You're adding possibly more talent. I think he's more talented than the guy who he'd be replacing within the rotation, Caleb. But in keeping with the trend, they also get under the luxury tax.
Right. So, but if they're the only team that has cap space, how many other teams are also trying to deal with them?
How many teams are realistically flirting with that line as close as Portland is and have a history?
I don't know. Do you know off the top of your head?
Most teams are over the cap, but most teams are not at the luxury tax at the point where it's a problem for them. Like the Warriors are over, but they couldn't care less.
They're not going to be turning to Sacramento for help anytime soon.
That, like they're a money printing machine right now.
Yeah.
Like they're moving into a new arena, and they probably sell more merchandise than any of the other franchises basically combined at this point.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They're not turning to Sacramento for help.
Exactly. And so if you start going down the list, like you look at the teams that have ne money committed, where like realistically they care. Portland's Washington's at that point, but I don't think Leonsis in the past has found a way to just deal with it. So we'll see how that plays out. So Portland's really one of the only teams that's got a history of avoiding it like the plague and made moves willingly to get around it. Now, that doesn't mean that Portland couldn't do something else. They could send Harkless and a first to somebody else for another young player who's making like $2.5 million or less, $3 million or less. Because the difference between taking back a contract that size and Harkless's deal is basically the difference in the luxury tax line. I think after this deal, I think they're $8.3 million off, and Harkless is at 10.5. So you've got almost $3 million to play with.
So between the fact that the Blazers were able to make this deal without using a first round pick,
good move,
and because they already have a couple of people competing for one spot, and now they've just added a third one. Mm-hmm. Those are two indicators to you that you think the Blazers are not done. Yeah,
I think that realistically they're not done, and then that in the history of the franchise. I mean, since we were talking about with Casey, since the existence of the luxury tax, the Blazers have paid it 3 times, 2 of it in the first years when they were coming out of, all of the money they had committed. I mean, they were one of the biggest luxury taxpayers in the history of the league, percentage-wise, because of how much money they had committed in the early 2000s. But the way this team has been, I should put an asterisk next to this, and I will still pay up my bet if they go this way. The only way I think that they will consider flirting with that luxury tax line is if they sit where they are right now, and it's just that $1 million or $2 million, or they end up making a big-time move and just say, screw it. We're going to go full rockets and throw caution to the wind.
Right. They could be sitting on that number or that first-round pick for – I mean, I guess if they were going to make a big splashy move, it wouldn't be the first round pick wouldn't be the thing that they were excited about or that the other team was excited about. It would be a known player, right?
Yeah, I mean, in my mind,
it would be like CJ trade.
You're
or
talking
something.
about moving like CJ and Harkless. So a huge amount of money is going out, which means a huge amount of money is coming back.
It's coming back in. Yeah.
So.
The one thing that I am concerned about with Hood, like I said earlier, is that he played a lot better when he played shooting guard. And I don't know if that was because of the people that he was surrounded by, or if that's just a more natural position to him, is just to be a tall shooting guard and not just a regular size small forward. But, so, I mean, do you think that does that concern you with the way he plays at all? Do you think that, he prefers one over the other, and that's why he, played slightly better in one, or do you think that just doesn't matter?
I'm not sure which way it'll go. I think he's more a wing than just one or the other. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So when I look at that, I'm just like, I think it's fine either way, especially with the way Portland plays.
Mm-hmm.
Let's put it this way. Do you think Rodney's going to start?
I don't know. I mean, they already have two guys that they're trying to decide, or maybe Stotts already they already have. I mean, he's certainly not, like you said, starting for CJ unless that's part of the move. Yeah, I don't know. I'm so excited to find out, though. I just wonder, when I was looking him up and trying to learn more about him, I just pretty much looked only at his numbers with the Jazz because I just thought that Cleveland thing, I don't even know what that was that time in Cleveland. But I guess I'm trying to get from you is like the way that he plays. How does it, it sounds to me like you think he should start.
Yeah, realistically, I think he's got a better shooting profile and a better offensive portfolio than Harkless does. I think Layman can possibly be the more explosive player, just given off the small sample size. But again, Hood's been doing this for a couple of years. Like, Hood is the guy. What have we always said about that position, Tara? We give us, 13 to 15 points a night from that position, and what does that do for this team? I mean, that elevates them to that legit, like, at least for me, that top 4 teams in the West and legitimate threat. Like, the difference between 7 points a night, or, you know what I mean, the difference of 7 points a night is realistically the difference between finishing in that top half, like, more so than just oh, hey, we made it, like, last year.
Yeah.
It's a legitimate, they are a threat for that group, and anything short of that is a disappointment. And I think it shifts the narrative ever so slightly in that direction. So yeah, me personally, it's not a secret. I've wanted to move on from Harkless for a while now. I wish him all the best, but I think that Hood would fit better for this team, both right now and kind of going forward, just based on his past production.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be crowded if they don't have an additional move to make. I mean, unless they do something like, because you were talking about how he's good at the pick and roll. He's a good ball handler, and maybe they just really go all in on these small lineups, and or the 3-guard line at all times. There's 3 ball handlers.
Yeah. I mean, realistically, I think that's kind of what they were kind of going for, is having another guy that can attack off the bounce. We've talked about this how many times, Tara, the type of siloed players, right? Hood's offensive game is not siloed. He can attack with or without the ball. And that's something I think that Portland was very willing to move towards. How Hood fits in, because he does like to go into isolation. Now, here's the thing. He's a very, very, very good isolation scorer. But how will that mesh within the offense? I think that's a valid question about him.
With especially alongside CJ, and Dame, who are also very good isolation scorers.
Yes. Will the ball stop?
Like, right. They just started passing the ball around.
And I've already seen some of the other guys, Seth in particular, who when he doesn't get enough touches as he sees fit, that ball stops real hard.
Right. And we're also looking at another player who is going to be on an expiring contract, and so is playing for his next contract.
Exactly. So those are realistic. Like, I'm not saying that like it's a bad thing. Like, if you or I were in that position, I would expect the same thing, because when you're trying to negotiate your deal, those things matter to these agents and to these general managers. So
now your thought was that the Blazers may be, talking with Sacramento. I've heard, I've seen on Twitter, people talking about Mirotic. People really are interested in Mirotic. So address that. So it sounds like if people think that might be a secondary move.
Like, I get that Mirotic is a nice player.
Explain how it would work, like, with the salaries and everything.
I mean, you could do Mo for Mirotic and it'd be a fine swap.
Just like straight up their salaries match.
Yeah. I mean, it's like $10.5 million to $12 million. So it's within the, what is it, 115%. So it's a doable swap. Portland obviously has to include the first round pick there, but you're including a first round pick for a guy who's going to be a rental. And then I'm hearing people say that he needs to start. And I'm like, so you're taking your best defender, Alfaro Camino, into the line up with the bench, so you're going to pair Aminu and Collins together. I'm sure that definitely was going to go really well offensively. Defensively, you'd have basically non-plus defenders on the floor outside of Nurkic. Like, do you understand what the pick and rolls are going to look like? It's going to be pick your poison. Like, that's. I saw a bunch of people that were saying that Mirotic's defense really stood out in the Pelicans series. No. Drew Holiday, Rajon Rondo, and one of the best defensive players probably in the modern era in Anthony Davis stood out in that series. Mirotic was essentially a turnstile compared to those guys. Mirotic has looked good, and if you look at all of his advanced metrics over the last few years, Mirotic has looked good defensively when he's had AD behind him, Drew in front of him, or Jimmy Butler alongside him with Taj Gibson.
I'd look good.
Exactly.
In that situation.
Like, it's not hard to look like a decent defender in those situations. Like, if you look at here, I mean, I have all of the synergy numbers for Mirotic in front of me. Spot up, poor. Pick and roll ball handler. When he's going against other bigs, this is the only area where he rates good, and he's in the 65th percentile. But isolation, 41st percentile. Post up, 36th percentile. Pick and roll ball handler. Like, when he gets caught in the switch, Terry, he's in the 23rd percentile. He's not good in those situations.
So he's no Al-Farouq Aminu.
No. And his shooting is not to the point of like, oh my God, we have to have this guy.
So the folks who are thinking that Mirotic would be coming in would think that it would be so CJ would go out, Mirotic would come in, and then we'd have Dame, CJ, Rodney Hood, Mirotic, and Nurkic. And to me, I don't think that this organization would go for that much change in the middle of the year unless they were bringing in like Anthony Davis.
Exactly. Like, and that's what I was talking about with a bigger move. Like,
because this team is built on consistency. Mm-hmm. And one little, I think it's going to be a challenge moving one person in, much less two, especially in the starting.
Yes, and if you're talking about starting Mirotic, now you're talking. Heck, let's just take Mirotic out of the starting lineup. Your options for pairing Mirotic with another big are Zach Collins, Myers Leonard, and Yusuf Nurkic. Who among those three guys is fitting that profile best? Probably Zach. So
to go alongside Mirotic?
Yeah, so you're playing Zach at the 5 again. Remember how well that worked out.
Right. And I hate to disrupt the momentum that Myers has built up.
He's earned it. Realistically, he's earned his time that he is getting right now.
Yeah. And it's paying off. It's not just that he's earned it and it's like okay that he's on the floor, but it's like actually
it's a positive.
Paying off.
Yeah, it's a net positive on almost every night right now. So
I went back and watched that dunk that he had over and over and over again.
Favors opted to get out of the way very quickly.
Well, and the thing that I didn't notice about it the first time is I just noticed Rudy Gobert just being like disgusted and like having to like I can't believe I have to close out and
also get to the rim.
but right before that, you just see Donovan Mitchell just like diving over. And it was just like they had like their two best players completely unable to contain him on that one. So anyway, I just wanted to put that in there. Watch that over. Watch Donovan Mitchell before you even see Rudy Gobert and the look of disgust on his face that he's been asked to come out and close out on somebody on the 3-point line.
Yeah, it's and Myers said it in the post game. Like he took 7 threes in college. Like he wasn't a shoot. Like he was a rim runner in college. This is nothing new for him. So for him to get out there and finish dunks and lobs, like, cool.
Okay, so have you heard any other rumors of possible secondary moves or ideas that people have floated about secondary moves?
Nothing else new or substantial that I'm like the one that keeps coming back up is the Aaron Gordon one. Taurean Prince and the Hawks keep coming up. Harrison Barnes, that one's more of like pie in the sky. Let's see something.
I've heard Taurean Prince. What are the details of that you've heard?
It can't be a full salary dump because Atlanta doesn't have the room, so it would probably have to be a 3-team deal. But I've heard that the Hawks have made Prince available, and the Blazers have kicked around at least the Atlanta Hawks as far as discussing what may or may not be available or who could be available.
So, we've talked about several times the teams that Neil Olshey has the best relationship with in terms of mining their talent pool.
Cleveland is one of them.
Cleveland is definitely one of them.
Orlando.
Another one is Orlando. And is Sacramento on that list too?
I think there's an amenable relationship there.
Yeah. Who else is there?
That's about it.
That's about it.
I mean,
yeah.
you could say the relationship with Denver, obviously with Will Barton
right.
and Nurkic and Plumlee. So
right, but they're not gonna do anything.
They have an
I was so bummed.
right now.
What? Go ahead.
I would say Denver has an embarrassment of riches right now. Like Malik Beasley is coming out and balling out for them. It's good times.
Yeah, let's not do anything to make them any better. I was so disappointed that the New Orleans didn't trade Anthony Davis during the Super Bowl. I loved that. I loved that conspiracy theory that they were going to ruin the Super Bowl.
The conspiracy theory I wanted to see happen was Andre 3000 actually stepping out there and saving the Super Bowl halftime show. Because, God, that was awful.
I didn't watch a single down of the Super Bowl. I watched a lot of the Kitten Bowl. That was so fun.
You would.
The great thing about the Kitten Bowl is the names of the kittens.
For Kitten Bowl. Oh my God. I'm so disappointed.
Why are you disappointed?
Going past the Super Bowl, I got that. That's understandable. But opting for Kitten Bowl over Puppy Bowl?
Oh, yeah. No, I'm sorry. I'm more of a cat person.
Shocking.
I know. I mean, puppies are cute too. I also didn't want to get up and change the channel. Anyway, so anything else you want to say about the Rodney Hood trade?
All in all, I think it's a good deal. I think everybody that I've talked to thinks it's a good deal. You're talking about your 13th and 15th guys being moved.
Well, the Blazers traded away their 13th and 15th guy and potentially got someone who is a starter or at the top of the rotation.
I'd say at bare minimum, he's like your 5 to 8 guy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty decent. You can't be mad about that. I'll find a way to be mad about it if it's the only thing they do. But meh.
If it's the only thing they do, it's going to be a bummer if that means that Jake falls out of the rotation.
Yeah, actually, especially the way he's been playing, right?
Yeah.
I could understand it if it was Rodney Hood and he had 2 years left on his deal beyond this one, and you wanted to lock him in at a cheap rate. But it just feels like another guy with an expiring deal.
So, and talk a little bit about that he had to consent to the trade.
Yeah, so because of the way that his deal was worked and signing the qualifying offer and everything that kind of goes along with that, he waives by having basically kind of a quasi no trade clause. So he has to waive his bird rights to allow the trade to go, but that's kind of his leverage that he can use to be sent to another team. So if he doesn't agree to the trade, then whoever holds him at that time can't trade him. So kind of a very unique rule that doesn't pop up all that often.
But this doesn't mean that Portland can re-sign him with their. He doesn't come with his bird rights, does he?
No. So what they can end up doing though is they can end up using the MLE on him next year.
Okay,
that could be something they could consider if things work out.
Do you think that they might be considering him? And in terms of just how he would fit with the way the Blazers play basketball, do you think they may be looking at him for a longer term, or this is just let's get through this year?
Hey, take a look and see what happens. I think that's a realistic thing. The one key thing
I guess they're leaving if they're going to if that's potential they lose Al-Farouq Aminu in free agency.
Got to add a wing somehow.
Yeah.
The thing I find interesting out of this whole situation beyond the trade was the fact that he did waive his bird rights for basically what amounts to a playoff team and playing time. And if playing time is the understood component of this, that's part of what informs me or leads me to believe that Harkless is probably on the move, although I guess it could be Layman. But if he was basically told that you're going to get minutes, somebody's got to go to the bench or somebody's got to move. So, and I've seen Harkless on the bench the last couple of weeks, and he's looked a little pouty recently. So I don't think Harkless moving to the bench or Layman being put back on DNP status is going to do either side any good at this point.
So I think it is somewhat unfair without knowing him for us to be looking at him and thinking that he's pouty. And I mean, I think it's unfair that like that one article was written about him. And so now if he, has crabby resting face, we all think that he's pouting.
You mean,
you know what I mean?
Dunk 3 times in a row and he doesn't move from his spot and he has his hand in his face and just sits there and stares forward blankly like the exact same way he did last year when he said he would never do this again? That kind of pouty?
So you mean he's sitting on the bench and not reacting when his
teammates are going
stuff?
on a run and that? Yeah, I mean,
I just never remember to look at the bench. So.
I have like 37 monitors when I'm watching a game, so it's like, what do I look at? But
so you're looking at a guy on the bench.
I just happen to catch
back
it.
to looking dead inside.
Yeah, and that was the
when
thing,
everybody else is celebrating.
Yeah, and it's so obvious because of how the bench usually celebrates, whether it's the starters on the bench or the bench on the bench, right? Like they get into it, and when you can visibly tell when Mo's like, I'm not having this. And it's not just once, it's not just twice. And like, listen, I'm not looking for it like I want it to happen, but this is something he has done in the past. And so it's like, man, come on. Like, get with it. So it's...
Okay, I want to follow up on what you said about playoff experience, because this is something that's been on my mind a lot lately. Mm-hmm. How important do you think it is that the Blazers acquired somebody with playoff experience? I read an article one time about somebody who was trying to decide what's more important to rookies, having a seasoned veteran on the team or just getting playoff experience themselves. And the results of this, it was just one study. It was just one analytical study. And they believed that playoff experience was actually more important than having like a seasoned vet. So do you think that like when the Blazers are out looking to add people to their roster, they're looking for people with playoff experience?
Yes and no. So remember coming into the free agency period, what we were told, what we were sold, that the Blazers had their options. They had that TPE and a couple other things and the mini MLE. Well, the Blazers were looking at 5 players, or ended up looking at 5 players, or making the MLE available to 5 players. And
how much playoff experience did they have?
So one player had 0 games. One player had 6 games. One player had 7 games. One player had 8 games. And one of those players had 58 games.
Whoa.
That's Bellinelli.
Oh, okay.
So Spurs dominance, right?
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's right.
That doesn't ring real true with playoff experience, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, technically, sure, it's true. They've been there. They've been swept twice when you look at the games. So yeah, it's nice to see that if it's actual real experience. Being on the back end of the bench and just knowing what the TV schedule is like and what the travel schedule is like, probably not as important. But Hood does have viable playoff experience. Now, he also has playoff experience.
He has a somewhat checkered playoff experience.
So, yeah, it's maybe not the best.
So what we're referring to is when he was with the Cleveland Cavaliers during the Toronto series, I believe it was, they were blowing them out. And at the end of a game, and Hood had lost his place in the rotation. He wasn't even playing, but they were at the end of this blowout. And so Ty Lue turned to him to send him in, and he shook it off. And he was like, no, I'm not going in. And so I think it was Jose Calderon went in instead.
Which is that statement itself is insane.
I don't know. I was reading all the Chicago or the Cleveland coverage of that incident, and it was kind of funny because they like really played it down there. Because the way they reported it was that he went the next day to apologize to the team, and the whole team just laughed at him because they're like, do you know how much we've been through this year? Like, that is nothing. Like, of all the things that we've been through, you doing that is laughable. Like, we don't even
We
care
had a
about
guy
that,
who threw a hot bowl of soup.
Yeah.
And not even soup. Like, we joked when that first broke, like, what's the worst soup you could throw? This is Joe Shane and I, and the consensus we came to was broccoli cheddar. And then it was confirmed that it was broccoli cheddar. And I was like, oh my God, that's like throwing hot magma. So, so somebody threw lava and Rodney Hood didn't decide to go in. So, I mean, there's levels to the craziness that the LeBron circus brings in.
Yeah.
But he does have tangible playoff experience beyond that. So
Right. He had, I think, 11 games with Utah and then like 17 or something with
Cleveland.
Yep.
So, like, there's like, I mean, I think we're on the low end of the bar, right? But that's for your average team that makes the playoffs. That's probably like 2 years worth of playoff experience. So, like, I'm good with that. That's better than everybody else other than Bellinelli from the other group. So,
so why I'm really asking is because I don't hear people discussing this, and maybe it's just such a small thing that it doesn't matter, but it's been bugging me, and it has to do with Denver. Denver hasn't been to the playoffs in a long time, and people have them marching all the way to the Western Conference Finals, which makes a lot of sense because they're in first place right now. But I haven't heard people discussing the fact that not only have they not made the playoffs in years, but they blew it in super important games at the last game of the season 2 years in a row in order to not make it to the playoffs.
yes. And I
Nobody talks about that.
I get where you're coming from, and I think that what changes that is that they have that Jokic perfume. It covers up the poo-poo of the past.
But somebody should at least bring it up.
I think it changes when you have an MVP candidate.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, what he's been able to do and what that team has been able to do with the injuries they've suffered, like, it would be a monumental collapse if they didn't not just make it to the playoffs, but win their first round series pretty handily.
Right. I mean, I'm pretty convinced that they're going to go to the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah.
But it kind of annoys me that nobody even brings it up.
I think it's, like I said, it's that perfume of Jokic. Let's put it this way. If Damian Lillard was having an MVP season right now, let's say the Blazers are 3-4 games better and Dame's putting up 32, 11, and 6.
Yeah.
Just absolutely, just basically what he's doing right now, but more efficient. Just nuking the planet, right? And do you think anybody's going to sit there and say, but they haven't won a first round in 6 years?
Yes.
You think
I do
so?
think people would say, but they still because he was playing practically that well last year and they still got swept in the first round.
No, I think if he's in legitimate MVP conversation, like, he could realistically win this award. I don't think people look at this team the same way. I think anytime you have an MVP candidate, a legit top 3 or 4 guy who you're like, yeah, he's going to get real votes, I think that changes the narrative of what it was in the past.
Okay, well, it's probably I just wanted somebody to say it out loud because I haven't heard anybody say it, and it's just me being petty. But
hey, you know what? Nurkic can tell them all to have a nice summer again, and I'll be right there for it.
Yeah, it just bothered me that, like, 2 critically important games with a lot of the same personnel were not able to. But
sir,
they're building off of continuity as well. I guess
it's about building off that continuity.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even say it with a straight face. Oh, it hurts. Oh,
well,
God.
We have another all-star, a returning all-star in our midst.
A no-doubter.
Yes.
Yeah, how about
couldn't
making
get
it starter?
him voted in to be a starter, but Damian Lillard did get named a reserve, so that was exciting.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was... And the thing was, it was legitimately a no-doubter. I don't know anybody in the media who didn't vote for him. It was... And
I was worried because he started off the beginning of the year
insane,
and 27 points a game, and that felt like nothing. It was just like, wow, you know, he feels like he should be getting more or whatever, but he's dropped off a lot. Well, I don't know how much a lot, but he's dropped off in scoring because he's been doing so much of getting everybody else involved. It's been going through Nurkic more. Other people have been scoring better, so he hasn't had to take on that load. So I was a little concerned that just looking at his stats, he wasn't going to impress people as much as watching him play.
But where's Portland sitting in the standings?
That's true.
Right there. I think the more terrifying thing is somehow the Spurs are now right behind the Blazers. Remember when they were done?
How does this happen? Well, because they all have a fresh crop of vampires now.
Yes, they do.
They've sent the bats back in. Everybody's all, you know, bit and turned into vampires again. And so now we're going to have another 20 years of whatever this team is right now. Those are the guys we're going to see for 20 years.
Yeah, that's what happens in San Antonio.
We're going to have Bertrands.
They don't see groundhogs. They see bats. And the bats never see their shadows because they're vampires. That's some deep lore right there.
And I've watched a lot of teenage vampire shows, so I can tell you exactly how this is going to go.
Unrelated, shout out the new Sabrina on Netflix. Pretty good.
Sabrina the Teenage Witch?
Yeah.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It's really dark. Speaking of dark timelines, is the one where Rudy Gobert doesn't get the nod for the All-Star game, and that spurred up some feelings around the league.
There were some feelings about that. So I think a couple of things about that. I think it's a good thing that we're at a place where a man can cry and like not everybody says that he's weak. A lot of people came to his defense in that. So I think we've made some progress as a society on that. You know, as somebody who sat back and watched Damian Lillard get snubbed for years in a row, I'm a little bit like, well, cry me a river, buddy. Yeah. It happens. But I am glad that, you know, it's a point where a lot of people were respectful of his feelings. What do you think?
Yeah, for the most part, I think more than anything, I'm a little bit upset that he didn't get voted in because realistically, by almost every single advanced metric and what he's meant to this team, he's been a top 2 or 3 big in the league.
Who would you take off?
Cat.
Oh, right.
I think the impact for Gobert is bigger. I mean, I know that sounds weird, but remind me, where's Utah in the standings? Where's Minnesota? There's some empty scoring, I think, there for Cat. But for the most part, I think they got things right. Poor Donovan Mitchell's going to have to wait until the next crop. This crop of guards in the West just all retire before he ever gets a chance.
A lot of people were mad that Clay made it. I mean, Clay had a slump, but he's still Clay Thompson.
Not only that, the last month he has been absolutely electric. He's been nuts from the field. And remind me again, the Warriors, they went on a 11-game winning streak heading into All-Star voting. So yeah, they peaked at the right time, as they like to say. I think the only other surprising one for me was that Tobias Harris did not make it. I thought he had a legitimate chance over LaMarcus. But hey, shout out to LaMarcus. LaMarcus, remember how it was a big deal when he made it? He just made his 8th All-Star team. Yeah. That's pretty crazy.
Well, the guy's a rock. I mean, he really is in a lot of ways.
For decades, he's just going to keep showing up and doing it. So,
and now he's the vampire.
Yeah, now he's going to do it instead of decades. It'll be centuries, like all vampires.
Yeah,
it's an interesting, but I think that for the most part, it's going to be good. We're going to have obviously Dame in the All-Star.
Who do you think's going to pick? Who do you think's going to pick Dame?
LeBron.
Oh
God, yes, absolutely. I would love if Giannis did it just so we could see it, and also as another way to spite LeBron. I'm on board with both of those motives. Giannis and Dame together is like a fever dream, so that'd be kind of cool.
Well, okay, but Giannis doesn't really. Does he do pick and roll?
Yes.
He does.
Yes.
All I can see is him just repeatedly slamming.
We'll see what happens before that.
Dunks.
That's your brain like tuning out because the dunks are so
How he got
amazing.
there. Yeah, I'm not even picturing how he got the ball in his hands.
It's just him
because it's
dunking on
usually
4
at the
people.
half court line.
Yeah, it's just him dunking on 4 people over and over again.
But he's getting it because he's getting sprung from.
Yeah, there's a lot of action, a lot of pick and roll action. Like the nightmare fuel is when they go 4-5 pick and roll between him and Brook Lopez. Because then you just have 2 bigs out there. And you're like, oh, God, what do I do?
Running pick and rolls, and you're just like, I want to die.
Brooks out here shooting 45% from 3, and Giannis is leading the league, and like he's out dunking entire teams. So it's terrifying.
I feel like Brook Lopez should get some sort of special award, like lifetime achievement or something.
Realistically, he could get.
Could he get most improved?
Yeah, I think he could, even though it's not his best year. I think like this second act of his career, I think that has to be taken.
Yeah,
into
that's what I mean. It's like he's completely remade himself all over again. He's like a movie star who like once did all he's like Jim Carrey who like just did comedies and then suddenly came out and started doing drama, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, it's a revelation."
No, realistically, I think he's Milwaukee's 3rd most important player outside of Middleton and Giannis. I know Brogdon has been good for them. I know Bledsoe has been good for them, but. Yeah, Brook is
he's key.
Yeah, he's just one of those ones that you didn't really see coming, and boy, is he going to get paid. So, but as far as back to Portland here in the All-Star game, I think the most fun I'm going to have is watching Steph, and Dame in the 3-point contest. So,
I was really surprised that Dame was going to go for the 3-point contest.
Yeah, that's a little iffy.
Did you have any inkling that would? I was like, why? But okay.
I've heard that perhaps they had considered Myers.
Oh.
But I don't know if Myers is a 3-point contest kind of guy. Like, listen, he's my guy.
I want Myers to get some healthy rest.
Yeah, and the pace of the contest, I don't think it's conducive for his.
I don't know though. He could totally surprise everybody
balls,
and go out there and drill every one of them.
Balls.
Have you seen how his wife shoots?
Yeah, no, Ellie is like
she's fantastic. She should be in
point.
it.
Yeah, no, the jumper is definitely on point. So,
but yeah, two Blazers in the 3-point shot, like. It seems weird to me.
What seems weird?
2 Blazers in the 3-point shootout.
Why is it weird? The Blazers have had multiple players in the dunk contest before.
I don't know. I mean, I'm happy, I guess. Although I want Dame to get as much rest as he possibly can, but I guess if he's going to be there, he's not going to rest anyway.
Do you know the Blazers have appeared in 23 times that Blazers appeared in an All-Star weekend competition outside of the All-Star game? They haven't won.
I did not know that.
They haven't won any of them. Skills contest, dunk contest, 3-point contest. They haven't won any of them.
They've never won one?
No.
Are you sure?
Yep.
Well, I mean, there's a first time for everything.
Jerome came close. Mm-hmm. Like that was 88.
Do you think they'll give so the other thing I've heard is people talking about Jake Layman in the slam dunk contest. Why wouldn't they do Myers? Yeah. Like if he was going to do one, Myers should be doing the slam dunk contest.
Okay, so we half-heartedly talked about this on Outsiders, but we wanted to get confirmation first, and I have confirmation from one of the Blazers directly that Jake is a in-game dunker only. He is not a He is not a dunk contest dunker. So
no,
confirmed bunnies. Bunnies are there, but he's not out here behind the back 360 windmill East Bay funk.
I can appreciate that. Mm-hmm. I don't like all the splashy, flashy like props and everything. If you're gonna dunk, do it in the course of the game. However, if they would like to involve a hammer somehow and let Myers Leonard be involved, I think that could be really fun.
Just Myers out here Paul Bunyaning a hoop down. I'm down for that. Okay. Go with that.
I mean, why not Myers?
I mean, the bigs.
I guess they don't usually have bigs, do they?
I mean, they had Dwight, who kind of got robbed, and the edge JaVale McGee, who definitely got robbed. It's interesting to say the least. That's for sure.
I don't know. I never. Do you watch All-Star Weekend?
Yeah, I do. I always tell myself I'm not going to, and then I end up just hate watching it later.
Right. Maybe I'll watch the Puppy Bowl during the All-Star game.
Oh, God.
You should be happy about that.
Now you're watching it 2 weeks later. Now you're just doing it.
Well, don't tell me who wins.
That's we're well past the statute of limitations on the Puppy Bowl.
I'll just have to stay off Twitter so I don't know who won.
Watch. Oh, wait, no, it's already ended. The puppies won. All right.
Well, I think we should probably wrap it up here.
Yeah.
We may have more breaking news later on this week, in which case
we will have a pod.
We can do this again and see what happens. But it's been fun. It's just so exciting that something happened.
Yeah,
honestly.
no, and it's not just, and this is not just like Noah Vaughn like getting shipped off. This is, I think there's something actual and tangible here, and I've been critical of the organization in the past when they haven't done things, so I'm gonna be, kind of excited about this. And
yeah, you sound real.
Yeah,
excited.
well, I'm just
real excited to give them credit for this.
I want to see the other move. Give me the other move. This is a very good move as a move before the move.
And what if there is no other move?
I'm going to be just as grumpy and irritable as possible.
You're always that anyway.
In general principle, but now I'm going to be more frustrated because they've just decided that they're just going to pay the luxury tax and put themselves in a bad position on their exemptions or their exceptions going forward, just because they wanted to maybe be a little bit better in the playoffs.
I believe that you gave this move a B-, right, in your article for Blazers Edge that you wrote with a couple of the other guys. So is that B- a grade?
It's on a curve
for just this move,
yep.
Or is that like it's a B-, and then if they do something else, you'll give them more, or how's that work?
It is. It's on a curve, and honestly, I was going to give it like a C+, just because this has just been the Blazers' MO for so long. Like it's like,
this is better than the usual.
That's what I ultimately ended up going with.
It's a little more impactful.
Yes, and then that was kind of my reasoning. Like, okay, this makes sense. I can go with this now, but it has the opportunity and the chance to get better. That is for certain, and I genuinely hope it does.
Okay, well, we will hold on. Let's not do a really long sign off because we just did a really long sign off with Casey the other day. Okay. But you can find me at TCB Biggs on Twitter. And remind everybody to purchase tickets for Blazers Edge Night coming up. And there's still time to buy tickets, but the sooner you can buy them, the better, because that makes it easier to distribute them. And let's see, why don't you go ahead and take us out of here?
All right, folks, you can find me on Blazers Outsiders on every game night before and after every game on NBC Sports Northwest, on Twitter at DMarang, at DMARANG, and anywhere else for your social media needs, wants, and, well, maybe not desires. Let's not go that far. I get some weird DMs already.
This is not that kind of podcast, Dan.
No. Well, I mean,
This is the Puppy Bowl and the Kitten Bowl podcast.
Wow, that sounds about right. I think that's it for now, and hopefully we'll have some more news here in the coming days to share with you.
All right.
For Bowen-Biggs, I'm Danny Marang. We'll catch you guys next time. See you. Bye.